ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the semi-weekly Mod Zoo Hangouts. This week, we have a very special guest coming all the way from California. We have Twit's own, there's my camera. Wow, it's already fallen apart, guys. We've never claimed to be high budget here. But with us this week, we've got Padre, Robert Balacer. He is known as the Digital Jesuit. He's worked with the Twit network for the last 6-7 years now.
Yeah, 6 going on 7.
And he's been a very good addition to their rogues gallery, and has been a wonderful security analyst. And with the This Week in Enterprise Tech, he's been helping a lot of people learn about the inner workings of how networks are actually held together. Also with us, we've got Doogie from Doogie Labs, one of our friends who straddles both the making and the modding worlds. And of course, we've got Bill Owen.
Hey, everybody. Good to be back.
So my thesis this week was kind of an interesting thought of what is it that separates modding, which is what we do, what we talk about, and making. Then, is it really different? Or are we really kind of straddling the same line with minor differences? But, I've been wanting to talk to the Padre on, just in general anyway, as somebody who does a lot of stuff in the maker world. And I thought this would be a great opportunity to have a maker and a modder, and somebody who straddles that line in between, kind of help me figure this out. Are we really different, or is this kind of the same thing? So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to send it over to the Padre, and let's get a little bit of insight on the philosophy of the making world.
All right. Now, I have to say that even though this is a modding show and I'm technically doing a maker show, I started modding. The various earliest things that I did was to build my own computers, build my enclosures, and then build desks and rooms around computers. That was fun for me. Then the maker movement started years and years after that. In fact, probably years after I'd really kind of retired from the modding and PC building game. And it was the same skill set. It was the same philosophy. It was this whole idea of I'm going to create something that hasn't existed before, but the process was different. Whereas when I was doing modding, I was really focusing on performance and different metrics of performance. I wanted my processing to be faster. I wanted my computer to be quieter. I wanted it to look more integrated into my workspace. When I became a maker, it was more of, okay, what are some problems? What can I design to fix those problems? And how do I build those things? So I would suggest that the two are absolutely related. I mean, if you're modding, you're making. If you're making, you're probably modding. But there is a slight mindset shift that changes from me just working on stuff that I have and things that are in my lab to, I think this might be a benefit to the community. So, that's my 2 cents.
All right, Bill, what do you have to say?
I can respect and appreciate both worlds, and I've done both. I was telling Doogie the other day, and by the way, Doogie is the biggest living maker I've ever known in my life. We'll learn more about that from him. Is that I make things to keep the lights on in my business, and I mod things because I love the artistic bend that you get from taking something and manipulating it or changing it or personalizing it. It's not necessarily for performance, but it could just be aesthetics or just making your stamp on it. I've always liked that. The other day, I told Drew, when I mod, it feels like when I left my tag on a school wall, it both felt bad and good at the same time, kind of a thing. And also, there's like this anarchist inside of me that likes to just, whoa, this thing's so nice and shiny from the factory. Now I'm going to change it to look like this instead. So there's this, it's a little creative monster inside me that I'm always feeding when I'm modding. And I get most of my joy from modding things. But on the other side, I have to create and make things to sell to people to keep the lights on. So I see both sides of it.
All right, Doogie, what's your input here?
Well, I when it came to computers, I guess you could say that I started by modding, which I think is the way that most people probably begin when you start tinkering. And that was in middle school. And I've always had an appreciation for electronics and building things. And the what I like is the satisfaction out of the fact that you can create something and at the end it's there and you brought it to fruition, and you can share it with the world. And I really liked modding because that has so much emphasis on the artistic side of it. It's not only practical solutions to problems, but it sort of lives at that intersection of art and technology, which is something that I try to strive for when I do project cars and things of that nature. So the two do go very much hand in hand, in my opinion. I'll leave it at that for now.
Doogie, I want to explain or describe to Padre your background. I followed you for a few years. We met through YouTube, and I discovered that, like I was saying earlier, you like literally lives a maker lifestyle where he's moved around the country to take on these different roles in a maker capacity, especially when you moved to Michigan to be part of a maker community full time.
Yeah, I guess we should talk about that a little bit. I've basically volunteered a year of my time to work at a makerspace in Grand Rapids, Michigan. At the time, they were one of the largest makerspaces in the country. And growing up, like every teenage boy, you kind of have a dark history and you get into some trouble. And one of the things that I come to realize was that if the maker movement had existed when I was younger, I would have gladly paid the $20 a month to go and have access to CNC machines and 3D printers and welding equipment and a circuit board mill, and I could like design and build my electronics. I had trouble in school. I wasn't the type of person that was very engaged in class or interested. I'm a hands-on type of learning style, and that school doesn't really cater to that, at least until you get into vocational schools. And unfortunately, in my experience, that doesn't seem to happen until you're like high school age. And so you sort of almost miss that key age where you can have a greater influence, honing somebody's interests and allowing them to move that into a career. But yeah, it's I make not necessarily to make a living, but because we have a very finite amount of resources, and it's about taking what's available to me in the environment and bending those resources to allow them to solve whatever problem I have at hand. And I wanted to pass that on to other youth, and so that's why I went out to Michigan and ultimately turned that around. It's pretty rewarding. A kid coming, like for example, this awesome gentleman Jordan. He 16 years old, came in. He bought a old Firebird, and he wanted to modify the engine a little bit. And yeah, you could buy aftermarket parts and bolt them on, but I'm like, did you know that you could tune the computer? Oh, well, that sounds really difficult. Well, it kind of is, but somebody's actually wrote this software, and we got this EEPROM programmer in the basement, so let's pull this chip out of your ECU, and I'll show you how to use the UV eraser, and here's the cells you modify to adjust your ignition timing. And we burned him a new chip for his car in an afternoon, and he saw how it was easy because of the accessibility that he had to that equipment, which was something that I lacked growing up. And that inspired him, and he's now in automotive tech. And just a couple of years later, he sent me a message. Hey, I rebuilt this transmission, and it works great. That's something that I can't do and guarantee that it's going to come out the other end working correctly. So, yeah,
that's an awesome story. This is seriously, I love to hear things like that, because it's people who say, hey, you know what? I just want to make things, and I'd like to help other people make things. It's really this idea of the seed. You put a seed inside someone's head, and they realize, whoa, I can make the stuff that I buy. It's like, yes, you can. And you can probably make it with things you already have. And yes, it may not be as durable. It may not last as long, but you made it. You know how to fix it. You know how to repair it. You know how to improve it. That's huge. Now, the school that I live here in San Francisco at St. Ignatius, they have I work with a bunch of kids who are in one of the converted service garages next to the residence, and they run the school's first team. That's the robotics competition.
Oh,
And so that workshop, it's, you know, we've got milling machines, we've got laser cutters, 3D printers, you know, laser forgers. And what I love about that is it's just like your story, where some of these kids, maybe they don't have the school aptitude, they don't have the book aptitude, but when we can show them, hey, you know that stuff you learned in calculus, well, it actually does make sense, and let me show you why it makes sense, because you're going to calculate this, and suddenly it's like, wow, if I had that when I was in high school, a lot of that material would have stuck.
exactly.
Because I wouldn't have thought about it as an abstract formula. I would have thought, oh, that's
Yes.
how I'm going to have to. I determine how much torque is running through.
It's a tactile learning experience.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's,
I despised math in high school, and now I got a calculus book here on the shelf because I need
I
it. If
hate
somebody
that.
would have told me that in high school, I would have been in every math class.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, I can go downstairs and I can tell the students, hey, this robot, it's going to weigh 600 pounds and it needs to hit X amount of velocity in X amount of time. And without batting an eye, they'll sit there. You'll see them like looking up in the corner of their brains, and they're doing the calculations. I'm thinking, I wouldn't have been able to do that when I was a kid, because when I was in high school, it was always a theoretical, and I hate theoreticals. You know, give me something that I can touch, give me something I can build, give me something that I can put together, watch it fail, and then say, okay, how do I fix that? I love that process. That's fun. And you know what? It's the same thing with modding. I broke more things than I fixed, but when I finally got it working, it was incredible.
Yes, that's how you learn. Now, let me ask you this, guys. Here's a feeling that I have about, you know, the maker movement. I feel that it's not growing as fast as it should be, because so many people or kids are absorbed with smartphones now. And like, for example, my business that I started in 2001, when I first started my business, I catered more to DIY, where we had like raw materials that we would sell people, where it actually required them to use power tools to use our products. Those products sales have dropped dramatically over the last few years, where kids just don't want to do anything. You know what I mean?
I get that every once in a while when I get comments on some of the things that we make, and someone will say something like, oh, that's just a clock, I could go buy a clock. It's like, yeah, you could, and it would be like every other clock on the face of the planet, but this one you can make, and this one you'll know how it works. And then I mean, one of the things I like to do is I always give a challenge. Here are the source files, here are my 3D design files, here's my CAD files, make it better. Whenever we have an audience member who comes back and they submit something that we made and then they made better, I love that. That's one of those things. It's like, yes, this is why I don't charge and I don't put my stuff behind any walls, because I want you to take what I did and show me why I did a bad job. When you do that, I feel so much better, because I'm like, all right, fantastic. Now I'll take yours and I'll make that one better. That's the world I want to live in. Right?
Yeah. That's cool. We keep pushing each other. Yeah. It is very empowering to teach somebody how to make things and do things. I've had people in the workshop that have never held a jigsaw in their hand, and they've done something and they feel very proud of it. And I'm trying to instill that into my son, but I have to be honest, it's a bit hard that when they have this world right in their hand where they can go anywhere. That's another thing, is that, like Doogie and I had my first car when I was 15, even though I couldn't drive it, just because I wanted a car so bad. And kids today, it's like, I can get a ride. My parents will give me a ride, or Uber. You know, it's just weird, dude.
You know, my parents gave me, it was a beat up junker. It was a Datsun 310 GX, which was already 20 years old by the time I got it.
It's a sweet car.
It's a sweet car, right? But the thing didn't work. The engine was busted. The electronics were messed up. There had been a flood inside the car, which I did not understand, but okay. And they basically told me, they gave it to me when I was 14, and said, this is going to be your car. So hopefully you can fix it. And I learned
Wow.
so much about what makes automobiles work.
Mhm.
And I drove that car for 6 years.
Mm.
And yeah, you're right. If you were to do that to a youngster today, they'd look at you and say, I'm just going to get something on Craigslist.
Yep.
Now, I will say that living in Maine, it's very small community, and we're nowhere near as far ahead as anything out in San Francisco is. But last year, he was 11 at the time. My son had a class that involved 3D printing, and so he went through the whole process of picking a design, engineering the design, figuring out how this design was going to actually work correctly after they put it into the CAD software, learning where the bind points were and how to loosen it up. So he made a miniature, I believe it's like a little action figure style. And, it was learning how to keep the joints free and flowing without flopping apart and falling out, everything like that. And it was quite the experience for him learning that engineering process, even though it was compressed down to 8 weeks. It was still something more than I ever had. That's for sure.
Yeah.
3D printing. Or go ahead.
No, please. I think we're about to say the same thing.
Well, 3D printing is very interesting, and this kind of goes back to our previous point of challenging each other to push the envelope of innovation, and that is that we all have these 3D printers, and like the other day, I got a CR10S, and it has the filament upgrade or filament out sensor, which didn't come on the previous models, but it was kind of an afterthought, this thing that stuck off on the side of the printer. And I was like, oh, well, I can fix that. And I went into the software and I designed a Bowden extruder that incorporated the filament out mechanism and guided the filament around the Z-axis screw and everything. So I designed an upgrade part for this product and put it on Thingiverse. And now all the other people that have that printer print it out and put it on and upgrade their machine. But I've already seen people who say, well, this could do better if this was flared out a little bit more or whatever. And so that innovation is already taking off and perpetuating itself. And so we're actually seeing that in 3D printers, and I found that pretty fascinating.
One of the things I like to remind people, though, about 3D printing is there's a lot of people going into 3D printers not using them the way that they're intended, as the rapid prototyping. Right. And they're looking to create their final product out of this, or they want to have the 3D printer on the eventual promise, because it will eventually come to the time where you can affordably replace a doorknob or replace a hinge or something like that. But it's not yet here. And we're probably looking at, I would estimate, at least 30 years before it becomes affordable, because yes, we're making great advances in the new epoxies and the new materials and all of that, but it won't be affordable. And so that brings me to what Bill and I were discussing earlier in the week, was he designs his own parts. He designs the 3D bracket for holding the video card vertically instead of horizontally, so you can actually see the brand of what you just purchased. And yeah, it's pricey, but it's gorgeous. It's solid. I mean, that sucker, how thick of an aluminum piece are you making that out of, Bill?
It's 1/8 inch thick, and we machine it both sides of it, because there's cheaper alternatives which are plastic, and that's how we built our brand at MNPC Tech, is we make a stronger solution, typically machined. And the reason this topic came up about 3D printing with Drew is a few months ago when I did the announcement video of the demonstration of another bracket, a video card bracket that allows you to mount your video card vertically, upside down, wherever you want in your chassis, because vertical video cards are a big deal now. Somebody within 24 hours, the next day when I went to go look at the YouTube comments, somebody had posted a 3D printable version of my design and posted the link in the comments saying, oh, you can download it here.
Yeah, and I hear things like that.
It was a piece of crap design. It was somewhat like mine, but he just took the general idea. And I thought, this is what's wrong with 3D printing. And some of these people, which I told Drew, it reminds me a lot of the, pirating and sharing music files back in the day, and it had all these bands up in an uproar about it. And I hate to say it, but look at the industry now. You know, the only way these bands make money is when they tour. And I'm sounding like an older guy because I am an older guy because I lived through all that. And part of me with 3D printing, I'm not saying that, I mean, it could be a ways off yet, but that's part of the 3D printing community that I don't like. And I've had people, when one of our products is out of stock, they'll literally email me and say, yeah, I noticed this has been out of stock for a while. Could you send me the file so I can make my own?
No. That's an easy one. And okay, so I'm with you on that. What I'm doing right now is I give my stuff away because I'm making a conscious decision to give my stuff away. But I'm very careful about mimicking designs of people who make their living from it. And you know, that's part of being a maker too. You have to understand some people put really hard hours into designing some of the things that you like the most. And if you just take their design and you make a crappy facsimile, that's not being a maker, that's being a pirate.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. And you see it a lot on eBay. That's where you see it the most is some of the products for our hobby. There's 3D printed versions that are just it's got that gross, surface effect on it that's cheap. To me, that's another issue. There's even, I know some retailers that are selling 3D printed version of things, and I understand it's easy to produce it, but in a way, I feel that you're lowering people's expectations for the quality, the final finish on something when you sell that stuff as a finished retail product. That's just my opinion on it because I built my brand on trying to make it as nice as possible.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I'll throw an example for me because we're just right now we're still doing a folding at home contest for the team that I'm on at EVGA, and when I fire up both of the video cards in my main case right here, it gets very, very warm in a long sustained manner. And if I were to put one of those filament based brackets in there trying to hold one of these cards, yeah, it might hold up at first. But under that consistent, intense, long heat, it's going to get gooey and droopy, and eventually it'll fall out, and I'm going to have a very unhappy system. And no, that's not at all what I'm going to do. If I want to have my video card on display, I will pay Bill that money for that good solid bracket, and it's going to sit there, and it's going to stay exactly where I put it. I'll even put Loctite on it, and it won't, nothing will happen as a result. Whereas, again, the filament-based thing, if I put Loctite on that, it's going to start eating its way into some of the filament.
And I'm not the Grinch of 3D printing land. Trust me, I'm not. Because to me, 3D printing for prototyping, when we do one-off projects for shows, having that capability versus having to mill everything, change the fixture, change it again, versus making it all, I understand the benefits of that, of the one-off parts. It's amazing, and it's a gift to makers. I just see I have to experience the bad side of it too, just because I'm a small business. And but I'm not going to sit here and whine and complain about it. I just believe that you have to keep pushing innovation, keep being creative to stay, you got to stay ahead of the wave. But I know part of me is that more and more people are going to get 3D printers, as they become more affordable. So,
and that's a problem. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that 3D printers, I've got 5 of them working in the room next door right now because I've got 3 different projects and I really want to get them done before the new year. But when I want to do something fun, like really, really fun, I'm not using the 3D printer. I'm going downstairs to the garage lab where they have a CNC machine and I can mill things out of, solid aluminum, or the laser sintering device where it's kind of like a 3D printer, except it's metal. And I know I'm going to have to do finishing because it's going to look like crap when it's done. And I'm going to have to put the hours into it. And like you, I mean, it's like, yeah, I can make, if you give me a design, let me see a design, I can probably replicate it. It will take me way more hours than it would if I just paid you for it. It will cost me more materials than it would if I just paid you for it. So it's I think the maker has to have a different mindset. For me, it's not, oh, I'm going to save a couple $1,000 or $100 or $10 because I'm going to make it myself. It's, if I'm making something, it's out of curiosity.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it costs more to make the thing than it does to actually buy it off the shelf.
I just made an automatic screwdriver housing for all my iFixit bits. The project costs are way more than it would cost for me to go to Sears, buy a automatic screwdriver, and get an adapter so it would fit my bits. Yeah. But I made this, and it's going to look cool when I bring it to a maker fair because, you know, I built it with transparent housing and it's got exposed gears. It's totally impractical, but I made it. That's the point. I'm not making it so I can take money away from someone else. I made it because it was interesting. When I'm actually working, I ain't going to use that thing because it's going to break.
How far off do you see, like, what I'm amazed at is like the carbon fiber 3D printers, you know?
I was just going to mention that actually. So when I got a printer, I got a turbocharger and impeller wheel here sitting on a cordless Dremel. And here's the housing. So I'm an automotive enthusiast, and that's where I'm at with this, is how can I do things with cars using this? And I got this printer for the rapid prototyping side because I like to port cylinder heads. And to do that, you need to build a flow bench. I don't have $25,000 to build a flow bench, but I do have $39 to buy an anemometer off of eBay. And then I can enter the duct size and measure air volume. Okay, well, all I have left to do is adapt this to a cylinder head. Well, all I have to do is scan a head gasket, right? Bring that into my software, and then I can overlay that with a pattern and then adapt that down to a duct, straighten out the air before it hits this, and there you go. I got a flow bench. So the filaments that they have out now that are laced with like carbon fiber and stuff that have super high temperatures. Another issue I've had on cars for years is at some point, somebody decided along the way that it was a great idea to make water outlets and like radiator in tanks and all this stuff out of plastic.
Yeah.
I get the convenience of the injection molding process and that you can make hundreds of thousands of these at once, and that's convenient for the manufacturer and keeps the costs low, and that low cost is ultimately passed on to the consumer. But I'm a person of longevity. If I buy a car, it will likely stay with me for my entire life. And I get annoyed with replacing that part. And so for the longest time, especially for like the VW VR6, I was like, I'm going to make an aluminum thermostat housing so I don't have to deal with this. And people have. But now, seeing these carbon fiber materials that withstand those temperature ranges, it's kind of a whole different facet to the same situation. Now I can just print another water outlet, and it almost costs less than going to, like Ford and paying a couple $100s for one. So I do see some savings in that in the future. And these materials that you can print with now, like based on the material properties for some of the ones I was looking at, it's actually feasible to print like an entire intake manifold and be able to put boost through it with a turbocharger or a supercharger and it withstand those pressures.
Wow. I think that we're probably still a little bit away from being able to 3D print myself a split turbo that can handle 700 degrees.
Oh yeah,
exhaust time.
Yeah, definitely not high enough temperatures where we're making turbine housings and stuff like that. But I can't wait for that day.
Now I have done high temperature applications with 3D printed parts, but not in the way you might think. I will actually print the negative and then make it out of ceramic. So I use it to mold ceramic. That does work. But it's destructive to the mold. So
yeah,
sure. Because basically I make the ceramic and then I bake it and the plastic just burns off.
Right.
Yeah.
I was kind of I had this idea the other day where I think I saw this with styrofoam where you make like a core out of if it's possible to do it out of a 3D printed material,
right.
And then you pour the molten aluminum in. It eats away the plastic and that off gases, and you're left with an aluminum casting or, casting whatever metal of your choice of the part you're trying to make.
Well, I mean, that's what they do it with wax all the time. Well, they'll make the part out of wax, they'll pack it into sand, and then they pour the molten aluminum, and the wax just literally vaporizes.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to be able to 3D print parts and do that, yeah. I would think. that's something I kind of want to look into.
Although I probably still won't be making the split turbo out of it because I have no belief whatsoever that my part will spin up to multiple thousands of RPM without disintegrating.
But
it might work for a few seconds.
Exactly. It will be the loudest turbo you've ever heard because bam.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no. One of the things that we were discussing in the conversation leading up to this actually was how interesting it would be to do the loss casting using that method. And I was thinking, at the very least, you could 3D print the mold for the wax, and then have that one piece you have on the rack that you just pull out whenever you want to make another wax mold. Put that mold into the sand, and there, put the wax part into the sand, and it just saves you time of having to recreate that wax every time.
Right. Yeah, and you can reuse that part, much like injection molding, where they use that mold for a couple million parts or whatever.
Yep. That's the only thing you've got to watch out for is you got to have something that'll handle the temperature of the wax, of course, and it'll be an easy release because you don't want to have any fine details snapping off in the wax because it got brittle over the time that it's heated and cooled. And that's the other thing that a lot of people need to look into if they're planning on something for these uses for 3D printers is what's the material you're planning on using? What is its lifestyle? How long is it going to last? Is it UV stable? That's a big thing.
Right.
Just keeping it on your shelf, is that going to make it deteriorate? And there's also a lot of plant-based ones they definitely are more UV stable than the plastics, but on the other hand, they're more fragile. And so you've got these trade-offs now. And so that's talking the affordable on the shelf units right now. You get up to the industrial stuff where you've got the resin injected materials, and you have to have a special ventilation unit. You've got to wear a breather while you're working around this machine, or if ideally you set it up in this room with the ventilation system, let it go, and you walk away for your safety and come back after a couple of hours to after it's shut down to make sure that you're not going to get blasted with whatever solvents are ventilating out from the materials.
I'm really excited to see what's on the horizon for this because ultimately the race right now is to build a desktop machine that you can go get whatever online and out comes your thing, ideally in metal. But
yes,
the maker movement is collectively like racing towards this, and sooner or later we're going to see a company that's going to win, and we'll see a desktop machine that the average person can say, oh, I want that thing, and order it on Amazon. And instead of waiting for the courier to bring it to your door, it just comes out of the printer.
That's right.
The nightmare, the lawyer nightmares that's going to cause, though, is just going to be amazing.
Well,
go ahead. No, go ahead, Padre.
No, it wasn't me.
Doogie.
I was going to say it's not. I think we already see these problems largely, right? Like you have companies that exploit slave labor in Bangladesh or China to make products for pennies on the dollar, often ripping off the designs from other companies. So we do kind of have those legal issues, and we are sort of dealing with them in that way. But instead of exploiting, humans and that whole side of it, now we just have to worry about, how does the person that created the thing, receive money for the
IP on it.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, this has always been a very delicate thing, not just for makers, not just for modders, but for pretty much anyone who's ever put together something, who has created something that didn't exist before. And that is this idea that I do not want our best and brightest to be just making things that will pay their bills. Right. That is a recipe for failure. If I incentivize a system in which people are only rewarded if they make something that will make money, then I think as a society, that's a huge loss for us. We miss out. Yeah. So and this is sort of the future part of the maker movement. The future part of the maker movement has to be, how do we support people and give them the freedom to make things that maybe even don't have any practical use at the moment? And this is the classical, well, endowment for the arts. I may not like 99.9% of the stuff that comes out of the National Endowment for the Arts, but I understand that it's exciting and it's important because it might lead to something else down the line. And you know, I need to balance that. And so, you know, my big thing is, how do I make sure that these people are supported? How do I make sure that they can make a living creating things that maybe have no use right now, because those things are going to become important down the line? And I haven't figured it out, but if you figure it out, I mean, that's the kind of philosophy, that's the kind of wisdom we need for the next generation.
The only thing I've heard of so far is like somebody that engineers the stuff and like have it on a site you can download and you pay a small fee for the downloads. That's all I've heard so far.
Yeah. And you know, the other alternatives are things that they won't fly in our society right now. Things like guaranteed income.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not there. I see too many negatives of a guaranteed income system. But on the positive side, there's that question of, okay, if everyone knew that they weren't going to starve, and if everyone knew that at least their basic needs would be taken care of, what would happen? What would be made? I mean, if you could suddenly sit in your garage and spend the next 10 years developing something that will be earth-shattering,
Right.
Isn't that worth it?
I think so. I really wished I could do that, because ultimately, if I was set financially, that is what I would spend every day of my life doing. That is, I would want nothing more than to be in a building with all this awesome equipment and a group of people who want nothing more than to be there and say, you know, what's an issue that we want to tackle today? Right. You know, how do we get water out of the air in a desert or whatever? And we can just go at whatever world problem it is and truly bring innovation about, right? Instead of just trying to make a buck. Yeah, I agree. And the best that I do is creating YouTube videos, and I have a chat room where people come in and ask questions, and I actually have a 24-hour hangout that when I'm not, you know, doing stuff like this, I'm in there, and people come in with questions and projects, and teaching people this stuff. It's all this experience that encompasses, I call it the laws of mechanics. And if you learn these fundamental laws of cutting things, measuring things, just the making part of it, it's really easy to apply that stuff anywhere else in life. Like, it's like learning electronics. I've burned up thousands of electronics parts and circuit boards, and I've burned my hands with a soldering iron countless times, and it teaches you that, yeah, you can fail and fail and fail, but if you work hard and you keep your nose in the books, then you can come out on top. And lifelong skills that you learn out of that.
Yeah, remember, folks, if you're soldering and it smells like chicken, you're holding the wrong side.
We can all agree that we want to empower people to DIY.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
You can definitely. Yeah. It's the best. It's the greatest gift you can give people, is to empower them to do things and go out there on their own and take the initiative to learn. Yeah.
Yep.
The weird thing about that is there's always this counter argument that, well, if you take care of everyone's needs, then they'll do nothing. They'll just sit around all day. And I'm thinking, I'm sure there are some people who are like that because they're mentally ill. But I don't know anybody. I don't associate with anybody who would just sit at home. And if your needs were taken care of, you'd want to occupy your time. You'd want to figure something out. Yeah. I think everybody has an inner DIYer maker. Right. Everyone's got something that they think, oh, wow, wouldn't it be cool if this existed? And you know, they just don't have the time to make it exist. What if they did? I mean, yeah, there'd be a lot of stupid stuff, but there might be some incredible things that get made.
Yeah. Your idea of basic income is really interesting because, you have people that it would be really interesting to go to work. Like, I go to a place of work, and instead of the vast majority of, I don't want to say that, but instead of a lot of people being there just because they had to get out of bed and they got to put food on the table, I get to come into a group of people who are like, right, what are we doing today? You know, just ready to go. And I think I think that might make a difference in that.
And here's the thing, and I understand it. I'm not going full on socialist or
sure,
whatever thing. But a lot of people, if you say, okay, you're going to live in the society, and we are going to take 15% of what you make, and with that 15% of what you make, we're going to give you file services, we're going to give you jails, a criminal justice system, we're going to have welfare and Medicare and Medicaid, and they'd say, okay, I understand that. That's part of the deal. But if you say, hey, we're going to take 15% of your income, and with that, by providing basic income, we're going to drastically reduce the need for prisons and for a criminal justice system and Medicare and Medicaid, and it will still cost you the same. Most of us would say, oh, hell no, I'm not giving my money to someone who's lazy.
Right. Yeah, you worked hard for that money. I earned that, right?
And I get that. I'm not making fun of those people.
Right.
Yeah, that's totally a thing. It strikes us with a matter of fairness. So I think those of us who think that something like this might work, we just have to sell it differently. We have to say, look, you're not giving more of your money. You're just asking them to use it differently.
Yeah,
it's the ultimate investment into the economy. Like, what better way to perpetuate growth than to have that? Like, I don't have to worry about a roof over my head. Yeah, if I want a house with a garage or a multi-million-dollar mansion, it's up to me to work hard to achieve that. But at the very least, if I'm down on my luck, I have that. I have that to rely on, and then we have people that would be more interested in going to school and fostering that maker instinct, right? And then go on to create.
Yeah.
It just let the people who want to sit at home and play PlayStation be out of the way. If you want to sit at home and do drugs,
that will
be fine. Get out of the way.
Yeah. But that's the thing. This does not disincentivize people from working hard. If you're a person who's going to work hard, if you're a person who has a good work ethic, if you're a person who wants to change the world, you're still going to do that.
Right.
And you can still be rewarded for that.
Yep.
But my thing is, because, this is my social justice thing, because that is a component of who I am. But when I look at the numbers here, at least in California, it costs something like $175,000 a year to keep every prisoner incarcerated. A year. Okay, so take 10 years of that. And if you gave that person $1.75 million over those 10 years, that person, A, probably wouldn't be in jail. And because they wouldn't have had to do whatever it is that they did. And B, who knows what might happen if you had an entire society like that.
Yeah.
But backing off from that, I get it. That's a theoretical, that's a construct that does not yet exist.
What Padre is proposing is 3D printers in all the prisons. And there may be a future Steve Jobs or Galileo engineer in there that creates something that's a solution that could solve many, many issues for people. And I mean, I don't have a problem with educating prisoners so they can have a better life when they get out.
Yes. And we don't educate them enough. We don't offer enough of those services. There isn't all prison really is about punishment instead of and less about rehabilitation. There is some elements of rehabilitation in there, but not enough.
Yeah.
For sure.
But I don't want to hijack the modding show with my prison social justice.
No.
One thing about us is that we go off on tangents. You just go off the flow, man. That's just the way it is. Yeah.
Now, I was going to circle it back around to the philosophy behind this, the weekly hangout or weekly-ish hangout, and the Mod Zoo itself, the forums that we have there. Bill and I are students of the old school modding forum, and it's the structure that we used to have of somebody comes in and either says, this is what my next project is, and this is the layout and the story of what I'm doing. Or how I encountered most of it was, guys, I'm running into this brick wall and I don't know how to get past it. What are your suggestions? And the forum that we were members of, pimprig.com, was very family oriented in that mindset of somebody always, no matter what your problem was, no matter how many other people would say, just go look it up, noob, there's always one person who said, hey, come over here. I'll be able to walk you through this. I'll show you the ins and outs of what I learned because this is my particular speciality. And with a couple of exceptions, for the most part, that forum didn't get the, oh, just look it up, noob, use the search feature, noob. We always reached out, and if we weren't the ones saying, hey, I have your solution, we could say, so-and-so has your solution, and let me go talk to them and see if they're willing to come help. And
We had to do a training for some of our students on how to modify their answers, because the natural inclination is to say, oh gosh, we covered that 4 months ago, go look it up, stop being an idiot, versus saying, oh, hey, you know what, we covered that 4 months ago, and these are all the reasons why we thought that approach wouldn't work. But if you have anything to add to it, then maybe we can reopen it. You know, exact same response, but different attitude, and it makes all the difference. I mean, you know this, because we are all in the same business of building up a community, and you don't build up a community by saying that's a stupid question, go on to the next.
No, absolutely. No, you don't. Hey, by the way, Padre, does Twit TV, do they have a community forum?
Oh, we've got the chat room.
Oh, just a chat room.
We're one of the only ones that still do a live chat room, which is kind of fun. I love the guys who hang out in there. And then we've, for the different shows, like for example, for All About Android and for Know How, we both use Google Plus. And I know what you're saying, but the reason why we use Google Plus is because it is far easier to mod it. It's far easier to keep out the spam accounts. And people who are going to be in those communities actually want to be in those communities versus something we might do on, you know, Facebook. It's just more engagement for us. So I think the Know How community has like 12,000 people. I don't know what the All About Android community is up to, because Jason has just started to sort of redo that one. And we actually pull projects and questions out of that forum, and they make it into the show. So we encourage interactivity.
What do you see for the future of Twit TV? I mean, is there any big plans, or can you share anything?
I will say yes. I can't share any. I can't. What can I say? Okay, I will say there's a couple of deals that have been in the works for a very, very long time, that are exciting because they will probably boost viewers by 2 or 3x. I mean, will get us onto a lot of other platforms that are normally not served just by the internet. I think that's about as much as I can say. It's exciting, and I'm kind of bummed out that I'm leaving in 6 months, because I got called away, and the guys in Rome finally, they want me in Rome, so I'll be going to Rome in September.
Oh, so you can like take care of their virus removal and their Wi-Fi and all that.
No, we've got an IT department. This is going to be. I'll put it this way: I'll be doing a lot of the same work, but I'm going to be doing it for a different boss.
The big man.
Big man. I call him Frank.
So are you moving there permanently?
Permanently, yeah.
Oh wow.
Which I know that bums me out. I love San Francisco. I wanted to stay here. I made a case for staying here. I love the audience. I love what I'm doing. But this was something that was probably going to happen 6 or 7 years ago, and they gave me 6 or 7 years, and then they finally said, no, you're doing this now.
Well, you're a valuable asset, you know. I'm not surprised that they want you over there.
It's just my line of work. There's not many of me.
Right.
There's a lot of me everywhere, but not at my line.
Well, and your experiences, the stories that you tell in each of the Twit casts, I can tell that, you know, your spread from working with Interop up through, you have a knowledge base that I don't think many people could even claim to touch. You know, between your experience with that, DEF CON, you know, you have the darker side of the hat covered in a way that many in your current job just don't even try to look at. And so you're bringing an experience base into that position that I don't think they've had at all.
Although if you want an example of what guaranteed income would do, that I'm it. Because I mean, I don't worry about retirement. I don't worry about feeding myself, because all my salary goes off to the church. But what it does allow me to do is I get to do experiences that are incredible. So 1 year I'm working in Rome. The next year I'm working in DC. The next year I'm working in Beijing. The next year I'm working down in South America. I'll be down in Antarctica. I'm creating networks or or building up jail systems for advocacy. So the experiences that I get are only allowed because I don't have to worry about where my next meal is coming from.
Will we get the opportunity to continue to follow you on your journey?
Probably. Give me time to figure out what the new rules are, because Rome has rules all of its own. I've been there a couple of times, and the last time was last year. I was there for 2 months, but I had a lot of people who were helping me find my way around. Now I kind of have to do it by myself. We'll see. Hey, and if you want to come visit, I am actually building a new studio in our Curia, which is about 3 minutes away from St. Peter's. It will be a full service studio. It will have a 10 gigabit fiber connection to the internet, and so you can do your podcast from there.
Now that'd be quite the kick. The mod zoo from the Vatican.
We're gonna mod St. Peter's or something.
Modding St. Peter's. Yeah, that'd be a great episode.
So, the Coliseum seems kind of run down. We're gonna bring our crew and they're gonna fix that thing right up.
Slap some water cooling in some of those columns. There we go.
Talk about 3D printing. We're gonna 3D print a new Coliseum.
Yes, sir. Well, we got about 10 more minutes before we have to call quits. Does anyone else have a tangent we want to tear off on?
Well, the Padre said that you just finished a new system that you had under your desk where you didn't hear the fans on it. Do you want to divulge some more details about that?
Oh, no, it's just I do a lot of podcasting, and fans are bad for mics. We all know that.
Oh, yeah.
But there is a thing about the human body where you don't actually have to cool the whole human body to cool the body. So it's 90 degrees in this room right now, but I'm quite fine because I actually have an array of 120 millimeter fans in several 3D printed enclosures that I can control with a little switch right here that keeps the lower half of my body cool. So you can imagine what that looks like. And I am completely comfortable, but I don't think you can hear the fans. Can you?
No.
Nope.
That's
completely quiet.
So sometimes I make things just for me, because otherwise I'd be sweating and looking really strange on camera.
Sure. Well, and that's how some of the best inventions have been made. Yes. It's important.
Although I was watching. How many of you do you all have Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay, I only do Netflix 3 months out of the year, and it's a cost saving measure, but also because I kind of like waiting and then I'll binge. So it's mostly Amazon, and for me, there's I like documentaries on Amazon, and the other night it was the history of the toilet, and it is you talk about a modder's legacy. That is like holy crap! I never realized those guys were like OG DIY makers. Holy crap! There's literally holy crap. I mean, it was like materials technology. It was flow dynamics.
Yeah.
It was everything. And I'm watching this thing going, why did I never think of this before? I take for granted, but it makes my life so much better.
Something that everybody in the world interacts with every day too. Well, not every day.
Exactly. We take for granted the engineering behind that.
And can you imagine the troubleshooting the first generation of those toilets, just going, I'm just going to throw it away. We're going to start over. Is that cool?
I need some volunteers to try this out.
So check that out. Yeah, seriously. If you want to get your maker juices flowing, check toilets.
It's funny because like the first episode that we had Norton on, wasn't one of the things we discussed was a toilet computer, a computer in a toilet that was liquid cooled?
Oh yeah.
That's a great idea.
Hey, my hash rate has fallen off. I'm gonna go on flush a little bit. That's cool.
Flushing your system, it brings a whole new meaning to flushing your loop.
Oh no. Actually, but that's not a bad idea. You've got that reservoir right there.
Right.
It gets replenished every once in a while. That's come on.
And it can hold a great deal of thermal mass, because that's like
Exactly.
Like 5 gallons in there, yeah.
and this way you get a flush with hot water. I mean, yeah, that's better, right?
Yeah, yep. Especially if you have the cleaner in there, it activates the soap and washes everything down.
Okay, so we've got it. It will be a Bitcoin mining toilet that also has like the little bidet thing with the there we go.
It'll be a poop coin toilet.
Flush for coins.
Oh, hey, I was just thinking about this last night. Can you think of any way to track dead Bitcoin? Not like inactive Bitcoin, but Bitcoin that's actually been lost.
No,
I don't think that's possible.
I don't think so,
that would
right?
be amazing to do, though, just to check.
Right.
Because I was thinking that the first time I heard about that they had built that mechanism into it, how amazing would it be having a system that would just keep track of how much was falling out,
Right.
no activity after so many months, and you just count it as dead or something.
Yeah, think about like that guy who lost 7,500 Bitcoins in a landfill because it was on a hard drive that he tossed, or how many people die without giving people their key. So those are all dead Bitcoin. It'd be
well. You got Leo and Steve both have forgotten their passwords.
But see, that was a joke when Bitcoin was at 1,000. Now that Bitcoin's at between 10,000 and a billion, less of a joke.
18,000 earlier today.
Was it 18? Yeah.
Yep.
I almost think that the lost Bitcoins doesn't matter because part of what sets the value of Bitcoin is its scarcity, right? So doesn't it kind of compensate out? And since you can divide it almost infinitely fractionally,
yeah.
Does that even matter, you think?
Well, it does in this sense. If I hold 50 Bitcoin and I know someone is hoarding 4 million Bitcoin, if that person were to die, my Bitcoin would be worth a lot more. Just saying. I'm not advocating for death here. Just theoretical again.
As a systems, to me, I love that thought process into the system, and so that the black hole is a fascinating thing for me. I want to know what the ratio is. I don't know exactly how to go about finding it out, but man, someday somebody will figure it out, and it's just going to be an amazing looking little spreadsheet to me.
Well, the ledger right now is what, 29 gigabytes?
Yeah,
huge. So I mean, obviously you need to build some automation to look through that because you couldn't go page by page.
No,
but yeah, I mean, it's all there. The entire history of Bitcoin is there if you really want to look at it.
No. Well, right now I'm sitting on. The fun part for me is I started with $17 worth of Dogecoin, 60,000.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got just under 60,000 Doge. That's now worth about 153 bucks, and a single Litecoin that's sitting on about 150 bucks. Both, it started at $17 when I first got them.
I have about 1.1 million Dogecoin.
I ran it for a week, so. In the early days, it was really easy to get Doge.
Yeah. Well, Twit really paid for it because we ran all the review systems in the brick house. We just kind of kept turning them on and turning on the client.
Good way to go.
It was weird because we were sending out emails to all of the companies that like to review gear with us. Like, hey, so do you have any really powerful systems with crazy graphics card setups? Because we'd love to check them out.
So what is your what was the mining rigs like that you built? Did you build like new chassis frames or just use PC chassis or what?
No, we custom built a couple of frames. I mean, it was nothing nice. It was all ugly, but we tried to explain to the audience that this is just basically put as many video cards as you can to run the hashes. And so we showed them you don't actually need a powerful CPU. You just need a bus that can talk to the video cards. I think we did a 16 video card setup, which you're not supposed to be able to do. But there were 16 crappy video cards, so it didn't really help.
No.
Yeah. When you realize that your 16 video card setup can generate less than one 1080, yeah. No.
I haven't done a mining rig yet, but the more and more I hear about it, I ask myself, why am I not?
Well, the problem is by the time you find out about one of the currencies that's really taking off, it's almost too late.
Yeah.
Because as soon as it gets a name, that people recognize, the ASICs are already being sold, and your regular system isn't going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you were to buy your own ASIC setup, it's just not worth it. You can't mine by yourself. You got to be part of a pool.
Yeah.
There's no way that you're going to be able to solve that block before someone else in a pool actually does, or someone with a cluster does. And the other thing is, I would say, because we covered one story, there was a guy who built a mining rig in his Tesla and then plugged it into the supercharger so he could just suck power off the network.
Oh my
That was
God.
kind of cute.
Yeah, how long did that last before Tesla found out?
I think they're like, no, bad user.
What if you? Okay, now you're in California, where Elon is proposing, well, possibly of the underground tunneling for like LA to lessen the traffic. Do you what is your feelings about that? Do you think that will become a reality?
Probably in 20 to 30 years, because that's how long it took last time. The problem is the last time they did tunneling in Los Angeles, they did such a half-assed job that they lost buildings and streets to it. I mean, they would shift the foundation, and next thing you know, they had to knock down an entire block. So I guess they did this. I mean, when I was still living in Los Angeles, they were still tunneling. Now, if Elon can come in and say, well, this is a different kind of tunneling, this actually works, maybe. I think if you live in Los Angeles for any amount of time, you are so sick of traffic that if anyone comes up with any sort of potential solution for that, you're in.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where he's smart, is that he looks at these finding solutions for these types of needs to fund, X. What is it again? Planet X or
SpaceX.
Yeah. SpaceX.
He didn't say, hey, I want to build a rocket. Can you pay for it? He said, hey, I'd like to start up a business to deliver payloads to low Earth orbit into the International Space Station. People are like, oh, okay, I get that. But in his mind, he's like, I'm just going to build a rocket.
Right. Yeah. I need that money. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I was going to say, I love his tweets about they're moving into finally testing the heavy lifters. And he's like, so if we succeed, I'm going to send my personal roadster up there, and it's either going to make it to orbit or it's going to explode, and it's going to be awesome either way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see this being used in a new generation of sci-fi where there's someone lost on Mars and they stumble across a Tesla. Can you imagine the Martian Mark Watney? He's rowing and suddenly there's a Model S. He's like, wait, what?
Oh, sweet, I'm gonna make it on time.
Well, what's amazing too is that he's got 5 sons.
Yeah.
And that I'm sure that at least 1 or 2 of them is going to carry on this crazy motivation to innovate and create things. Oh, well, I hope so.
Oh yeah.
Well, he's the kind of billionaire that I can actually admire, because I don't admire people who have money. I might admire how they got it, but with Elon, what sets him apart, and the reason why so many people admire him, is the fact that he made it big with PayPal.
Yeah.
Now, he could have just sat on that. He could have invested it and lived comfortably for the rest of his life and been a millionaire/billionaire. But he said, no, I'm going to build something else. I'm going to build Tesla. And then I'm going to build a solar company. And then I'm going to build a spaceship. Holy crap. You talk about a builder. You talk about a maker. That's making. And if you're going to do that with your money, kudos to you. You deserve every dollar you get, and you deserve every dollar you have, because you're using it to make something that didn't exist. And again, keep going back to that.
Yeah, and a lot of people who forget what the whole goal behind Tesla was. For him, it's not running the company, it's not having a successful company. He created Tesla to drive other manufacturers to making inexpensive and affordable and good quality EVs. If he continues to have a company that still works after these other companies do that, that's just extra icing on his cake. But his intention was to force Ford and Chevy and GM to do this.
And he succeeded.
Yes.
Because remember, what did we have before Tesla? you had the rumblings of Toyota's hybrid, but it was
Well, you had the
mostly
Saturn EV1 initially.
right, exactly, and we killed it because oh, no one wants this. This is financially unsustainable. And then here's Tesla coming in saying, hey, guess what? Not only am I going to build this, but I'm going to build the company to build it. And everyone says I'm going to fail, and everyone says there's no way we're going to make money in this market because it's controlled by the big three. And within 10 years, the big three were scrambling to find something that was sexy.
Yes,
like
sexy. That's the key.
Right? Yeah, it was sexy tech. It was everyone figured, oh, an Electron, oh, it's the dork mobile. But then the first time someone drove up in a Model S, they're looking at going,
yeah,
that's an electric car.
Oh, I could be honest. I could be behind the wheel, and yeah, I mean, I always that's what I love about Tesla is that they knew that they had to make it look appealing, like a luxury sports sedan car, look luxurious, and of course, many people latched onto that because it is a very sexy car.
It is.
Where before they were just, oh, that's electric, that's an EV. It's just looks stupid. I mean, like, I hate to say it, but that BMW, what is that BMW thingy that looks like a Playmobil toy?
I saw that.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
Is that E-Driver, E-Tron, or something? I can't remember.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be seen in that.
Right. Come a long way from the Honda Insight.
Oh, that's such a sad story. It really is, because you had the Insight and you had the Prius coming out at the same time, and on the spec side, the Insight is actually far more fuel efficient because it is a gas engine first with an electric assist versus an electric engine first with a gas assist. But it was a dork mobile. It really was. I'm sorry.
Yes, it's kind of like the incumbent bicycle for cars. Yeah, you don't want to be seen riding one.
Yeah, you may think you look cool.
Yeah.
No,
like
man.
Squidward from SpongeBob. Squidward thought he was pretty cool. Yeah. So, well, this was a great hangout. The time went by really fast. Did we have anybody in the chat with any questions or anything, Drew?
We've had a lot of people saying, oh, crap, it's the Padre. This is awesome. So, right on. And I got to laugh about that because, I mean, hey, we do have a couple of quote-unquote celebrities from time to time. I mean, if you talk to these guys, though, the best conversations so far have been with Patrick Norton and with the Padre now. And it's great because it's that well of experience that we don't have, of course. But you guys talk for a living, and so you just make it so easy, too.
Yeah, you make it easy.
And I got to say, as a fan, because I have been following your career at Twit, and I haven't watched all of your shows, I admit that, but that's only because of time. I do watch Twit religiously.
Oh, thank you.
To pardon the pun. But you've been a great addition to their staff, and I did want to also take the opportunity to say you will be sorely missed, and I look forward to following your future adventures.
Well, I might be more behind the camera in the future, but you'll probably hear me in voiceover because I'm the only one there who does English. So if it's English, it's probably me.
If you can keep up on the social media the way you have been, then I'll be following along every step of the way.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And this was a lot of fun. It's nice to meet people who just like to make things. That's my natural environment, and this was fun.
Well, if we have time and if your schedule works out, I guarantee that we'll be extending another invitation at some point.
Absolutely.
That'll be fantastic.
Give me a ping. If I'm here, I'm here.
Excellent.
Cool. We may want to have some other topic and want his input and opinion about it too. You never know.
Just not religion. Let's not do religion.
No.
that gets messy.
So anyway, in the Great Holy Grudge, no
one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
And there goes my subscribers. What the hell?
All right. On that note, gentlemen, it was a great week. As we keep saying every other time we end one of these shows, there's something out there that's bugging you. And this time I'm going to, instead of just saying go out and mod it, figure out that thing that's been bothering you. And if you don't have a tool for it, make one this time, okay? come over to the forums, tell us about it, share what you've learned, and hopefully we'll draw another generation in. Yeah, I know we're the old guys sitting in our corner of the forum and shaking our sticks at these kids out there on the social media doing their thing on the Facebooks and whatnot, but the forums are going to be permanent as much as we can. So, you know, hey, whose information is going to stay out there at the end of the day? You guys have a good one. We'll talk to you later.